and welcome to my channel. Today we are going to be doing my end of year TBR, so all of the books that I plan on reading for the rest of the year. So we are halfway through the year already and I have read 75 books so far as of today, and I'm not going to give you a list of 75 more books because I don't think I will be reading 75 books for the rest of the year. However, I do have quite a lengthy list of books that are either to help me complete some of the goals I've set or on my priority TBR, or the next books that I want to read for some projects that I'm doing. So we are just going to go through them. I will have timestamps linked down in the description if you want to skip around and view like a certain section. But yeah, let's just get into it. And also don't forget to check out my Patreon where you can see even more videos from me. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to start off with my 24 and 24 priority TBR list. So these are 24 books that I wanted to read this year, and I did do an update of that not too long ago. However, for the purpose of this video and saying all the books that I plan to read for the rest of the year, I do sort of want to mention those books again. There are 15 of them, so I'll have it like up on the screen, my graphic, also showing like the ones I've already completed, but I have 15 that I still need to read, which is a lot. I definitely haven't been making as great of progress on this goal as I was hoping to. So the books that I still need to read are Raw Dog, Caliban's War, The Sun and the Star, Sex Cult Nun, The Wise Man's Fear, Late Bloomer, The Pairing, This Wretched Valley, Fancy Meeting You Here, The Book at War, A Wilderness of Stars, Spells for Lost Things, The Blade Itself, Out on a Limb, and Annie-Bot. So those are 15 books that, again, are still high on my priority. They are all books that I still really want to read, and I do own the majority of them physically, and I would like to read the books that I physically own and like have those be a priority, since obviously me or someone I know spent money on them and books are expensive, so I do want to prioritize the books that I do own. So next is to read all of my NetGalley arcs. I do have 10 arcs left still to read. It is one of my goals to read all of these books and to just like completely stop using NetGalley because it is not my favorite of sites to use. So I do have 10 books on my TBR for that. And I did start a sort of video series where I read 20 first chapters of 20 different NetGalley arcs that I had, and I ended up DNFing a bunch. And I was going to do a second video where I had another 20 books on NetGalley, but I pretty much ended up DNFing the majority of those, so I just felt like it wasn't a good video. But either way, I have 10 books left, and those books are Where Darkness Blooms, The Jinn-Bot of Shantiport, Nordic Visions, The Heiress, Coyote Lost and Found, Late Bloomer, The Eyes Are the Best Part, Reinventing Love, The Pairing, and Red Dead's History. So again, that is a priority for me to read those books and just stop using NetGalley. Okay, so another one of my goals was to read 6 classics this year, and so far I have only read 2 of them. So for the end of the year, I have 4 books that I have picked out that are classics that I would like to read. And the first one is The Alchemist. This one is one that I know is short, and so many of like the people I know have actually read this book and really enjoyed it. So I figured this was a good safe choice just because classics aren't my favorite. I am also adding Jane Eyre to my end of year TBR because this is one, again, that I physically own, so it's obviously a priority of mine. But also, I have read quite a few books from the Bronte sisters. I have not yet read Jane Eyre. This one is also on my 100 best books scratch off poster that's behind me. So this book kind of works for a lot of things, and I feel like this is more of like my safe choice out of this stack, just because out of all of these, I feel like this is the one I have the most like chance of really enjoying, just because classics are harder for me to get into. It's very rare that I find a classic that I really end up loving. But I feel like out of this stack, this one I have a high chance of enjoying, so I did want to add this one on here. However, I'm also adding Crime and Punishment, and besides just being a book that I have owned, being one of the books I've owned on my TBR for the longest, I am not actually excited to have this on my TBR. However, it is one that, again, I've owned for so long, so I just need to push myself to sit down and actually read it. But this one really intimidates me. I have only ever heard intimidating things about this book, so I have lower hopes for this one. However, I will be giving this one a go. Probably. My plan is to give it a go sometime before this year ends, so we shall see how that actually ends up going. And then Rebecca, this is another classic book that I physically own. It is also on that 100 best books scratch off poster, and this is a one that I always hear mixed sort of things about. I believe it's more of like a thriller mystery book. So that's not really a genre that I like. Classics aren't really a genre that I like. So I'm sort of nervous to go into this one just because it's not something that I would typically read. However, I do want to give it a go. And again, it's my goal to read more classics this year. So I want to at least give these books a try and at least give myself the benefit of the doubt, knowing that I tried to complete this goal. I'm adding The Warden to my end of year TBR because I am currently reading this one, and there's no other reason besides that one. But this is, I believe, the first in a series. And it's more of a cozier type of fantasy. I'm not sure if this one is really considered cozy fantasy or not. I'm not the biggest cozy fantasy reader, so I don't really know like where the lines for it are, but I do think this one is somewhat of a cozy fantasy, and it does have a sapphic relationship, and our main character is a necromancer, and I haven't gotten very far in this one yet, but I'm really enjoying it. And yeah, this one is being added to this TBR. Okay, so next I want to sort of talk about a bunch of the physical, like finished copies of books that I have been gifted from publishers. And starting with this first one, this is the only one I have not hauled yet. This one I just recently received, but that is F1 Racing Confidential. This is a whole book about Formula One racing, and I know nothing about Formula One. However, I have really gotten into reading nonfiction books, and I do like a good nonfiction book on just like a random subject, and I feel like Formula One would be just like a really interesting thing to get like an insider look at. So I am excited about this. Yeah, so this is the only one that has not been like featured on my channel already. But yeah, the next one is Housewife, and this is one that I will actually be starting very soon. But I have like a whole feminist reads project going on right now on my channel, if you have possibly seen it. But this is one that is very topical to the things that I have been reading a lot of, especially in nonfiction, and I feel like I'm going to absolutely love this one. And yeah, this is another finished copy that I was so kindly gifted from the publisher, so I do want to read it this year. I don't want to just be like gifted all of these books and not read them, at least in the year that I was given them. So I would like to read all of these, obviously, but yeah, they are going on my TBR. These next two books are both very out of like my typical type of nonfiction that I read, but I'm still interested in them. This first one is The Asteroid Hunter. This is a more scientific nonfiction, and again, I do like nonfiction that explores topics that I'm unfamiliar with. However, science isn't my favoriteest of subjects, and I kind of have a fear of like reading this book and not understanding it. So we will see how this goes. I do really want to give it a try, but yeah, science, not my favorite. However, I am interested, so we will see. And then we have Look Away. This is one all about like a true crime set in Germany. True crime, not something I typically go for. However, I don't mind watching it, so I feel like I just haven't found like the right true crime book. And I know nothing about German politics besides what I learned in history class about like the world wars. So I have no clue what to expect from this book or anything going on in Germany. So I am interested to give this one a try, but again, it's not really a subgenre that I typically go for. So it's another one where we will just have to wait and see how I feel about it. And these next two books are both books that I have put on a prior TBR and never ended up getting around to, but I do really want to read them. They are very high on my TBR. And we have The Stolen Wealth of Slavery. This is an entire book about a case for reparations. And I recently realized that this author is actually white, which is interesting. It's an interesting choice. I think he's a journalist, if I'm remembering correctly. However, I did not know that when I got this book. But I am still interested to see what all is said in this book. And next we have Madness, and this is an entire book about the nation's last segregated asylum. And this book just seems so up my alley. I'm not sure what it is about it and like the synopsis and everything and like flipping through it. But this just seems like a book I will absolutely devour and absolutely love. So it is one that I keep eyeing on my TBR and just haven't picked up yet. So it is very high on my TBR. I cannot wait to read this one. But yeah, that is the last of the finished copies that I was given to by publishers. Yeah. And then for my Feminist Reads project, the next page that I have in the Feminist Book Club reading guide to talk about is Feminism Leveled Up. I'll have that page up on the screen, but I have read some of the books already. And I won't be talking about the further reading sections being added to this TBR. Just because, one, I've read a couple of them already, and two, those are all on my Patreon, so I will just, if you want to hear about those books, it'll be on Patreon when I finish that section. But for like the main books on this page, I still need to read Unapologetic, White Feminism, and We Do This Till We Free Us. And yeah, I am very excited to continue on in this project. I am hoping to also get the next page after Feminism Leveled Up done. However, it just seemed too daunting to sort of put it on this end of year TBR, but you know, I will throw that page up as well so you can have an idea. But it is a very big possibility that I will get around to doing that page sometime this year as well. But yeah, that's sort of my end of year reading plans. I will probably read a bunch of books that aren't mentioned on this list just because I am a mood reader, just because I'll probably end up buying some other books that I end up reading right then and there. You know, any sort of thing. Also audiobooks. Most of the books on this list I don't have as an audiobook, so I will probably read a bunch of audiobooks that aren't mentioned. But again, this is like 30 something books I think that I mentioned, and that's quite a lot. Again, I don't think I'll be reading another 75 books for this last half of the year. However, there is of course that wiggle room, and yeah, I don't want to put any pressure on myself. However, most of these are just because they are my goals for the year, so I would really like to complete those goals and stuff. But those are all of the books that I plan to read for the rest of the year. I would love for you to comment and tell me what books you're planning to read for the rest of the year. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye!